Thanks for listening to The Dad Project. To help keep the podcast going, please consider donating at the link in the show notes or on our website, thedadprojectpodcast.org.
Few things are harder than the mission of raising your kids. At The Dad Project, we get experienced dads to reveal what's worked for them, offering practical, time-tested advice. Being a successful dad is tough, and we're here to help you get it done. Welcome to The Dad Project.
Hey, welcome back to the Dad Project podcast. I'm your host, Josh. In this part 2 of our interview with Dr. Kheriaty, we discuss the linkage between social media and anxiety and depression with the youth. We also talk about some strategies that dads can employ to help their kids navigate the online experience and keep them healthy and safe. We've included some resources in the description below for you or anyone you care about who may be going through mental health issues or any crises. Please like, subscribe, comment, tell us what you think about the episodes, and let us know about any topics that you might want us to cover in the future. And lastly, we're a volunteer-run organization, so if you like what we do, please consider making a donation. Any amount is a huge help to us and keeps us going. Thanks so much, and here's our second part with Aaron. I mean, obviously, a lot has changed since the late 90s. I don't think rock music is as good. I think the rules in the NFL have been gotten worse, right? So, like, I mean, there's some changes in society that I could complain about as an old guy. So there are definitely changes. What do you? So I don't want to beg the question and put the answer in your mouth, but we've obviously kind of alluded to it: social media and the exposure to things that are not healthy. One, that's, I think, irrefutable. I think everybody has that experience, right? I mean, you're scrolling through X and you see things like either you're not interested in or you don't want to see. You send one cat video to your wife or your kids, and now you got 50. Every time you scroll, every other thing is about some kitten or something that you don't really care about. So you're trying to be nice, and then you're overloaded with stuff. So the internet does that to you, right? It overloads you with stuff that maybe is not good for you or you don't want to see. So the exposure to that, but what do you think the most significant factor in the last 25 years has been with regard to the increased rates of depression and the increased rates of suicide? I would say, is it depression? Okay, let me back up. There's a lot of different tangents I'm going down here. Would you say that depression is the most serious mental health issue that the youth experience today?
I would say yes. I mean, there are other severe and persistent mental illnesses that can first present among adolescents. Schizophrenia can manifest as early as 15, 16 years old. In some cases, sometimes later in life. But rates of schizophrenia are constant. They have not changed, likely will not change in the future. Same with bipolar disorder, or what used to be called manic depression. Rates of that seem to hold steady across different cultures, across different time periods. But rates of depression, rates of various anxiety disorders seem to fluctuate more in given cultural moments, given historical periods, probably more influenced by environmental factors. Certainly there's a genetic component to those disorders as well. Certain people are just predisposed to them. But there are other factors that appear to be contributing. So I would say depression is probably the most common problem among adolescents when it comes to mental health, or anxiety, which often goes hand in hand with depression.
Okay. And then, so you said that the suicide rates obviously are skyrocketing, and that's accounting for all kinds of different things. And then you said that most people who entertain suicidal ideations or thoughts or whatever, they usually have depression, right? So if depression is one of the top, mental health issues within the youth, I think it's obviously very important because it's one that leads. I mean, I don't know anorexia that necessarily leads to someone wanting to commit suicide. I mean, it may. I'm not a doctor, but I mean, I can see that if you're depressed and it leads to suicide, then we kind of want to focus on the thing that has the most immediate or I think lasting effect, right? With
Yeah.
suicide, you can't come back from suicide, right? You can
Yeah,
come
that's
back
right.
from some disorders and you can get some help. So with regard to depression or anxiety, if we're going to take a look at those two, maybe if those are the top two, am I putting words in your mouth by saying that social media can reasonably be linked to that increase of depression and anxiety and therefore suicides? Or is there something else more significant in the last
No,
25 years?
I think it clearly has been linked. I mean, the iPhone was invented in 2007. It was right around that time that we started seeing the rise in depression and anxiety among adolescents, especially among adolescent girls. We're probably influenced by these technologies and by screen time in different ways than boys are. Boys have their own dangers that they face online, which are different from the dangers that girls contend with online. But there's robust research now. My colleague Claire Morrell at the Ethics and Public Policy Center has a book coming out on this, and she's very familiar with the whole issue of screens and kids. But essentially, just to break it down to the simplest distillation of the results and the upshot, there's a direct linear relationship between screen time and negative mental health outcomes. The more screen time you have, the worse outcomes you get, period.
I mean, that's been
you could parse it out in terms of like what content are you consuming, but like just to boil it down, more time on screens, worse mental health outcomes.
Right. Okay. All right. So
less time on screens, better mental health outcomes. It's actually pretty simple at the end of the day.
Right.
And
so I didn't want to
I could go through all the studies and all the research, but
I mean, so that's what you do
upshot
for a living. So that's why I obviously defer to you. That's why I have you here on the show. I mean, that's sort of kind of makes sense to me, sort of just intuitively or maybe anecdotally when you look at things or you hear stories about, family or friends, et cetera. But it's so hard to make a generalization from anecdotes, right? It's not very wise. So I'm glad to hear you say that at least, so that for those listening who may sort of in the back of their mind think the same thing, but don't have the virtue of being, a psychiatrist and knowing how to read through the literature and having the time and all that kind of stuff, to hear that, like you said, that distillation where, yes, the increase in screen time, increase in mental health issues. I mean, I don't mean to simplify it and to move on so quickly, but what from the positive aspect, right? So we're here to help dads get it done. So how do dads get it done in terms of, I mean, that's one area I guess we could talk about. And there's probably a lot of areas in which we could delve into how to be a great dad from the mental health perspective. But if this is sort of the glaring problem with the youth, then what do dads out there do to help ensure that their kids, I mean, you have to use screens, right? We're going to have to do it. Like my kids, we have one iPad for all 4 girls. It's locked. And so we kind of control the access to it, but I don't want them to be naive to technology. I don't want them to go out into the world and not know how to function like everyone else. So what's that balance, and how do dads out there ensure that they're, protecting their kids at the same time, bringing them up to be productive and be able to integrate?
Yeah. So I would say anything that you could do to minimize screen time is going to be helpful. You can't eliminate it entirely, and that may not be desirable to eliminate it entirely. The biggest thing especially for young girls, but also impacts boys, is FOMO, the fear of missing out, right? This is how my peers communicate with one another. We get on a text stream or WhatsApp stream, and that's how we keep up and know what's going on. And if I'm left out of that, I'm going to be left out of social life. Those worries are often a bit exaggerated, but they're not entirely unfounded. But a couple of things that are very simple that can be done. Number one, try to find a school or advocate for your kid's school to be a cell phone free school. So screens are not helpful with education, right? Just to cut to the chase. Kids do not need cell phones in school. They're nothing but a distraction. And you should work with your school leadership to understand how they can basically go cell phone free during the school day. So it's at least not that they're not wasting time. It's not impeding their education. It's not impeding their socialization and their face-to-face friendships that are going to be cultivated, for the most part at school when they're there with their friends and their peers. So that's a huge policy that's, I think, very important. I would say parents should be very restrictive about access to social media for adolescents. I mean, I don't see any reason why an adolescent should have a social media account. So you can communicate via text message stream, and the parent should have access to seeing what is on that stream and access to everything on the phone, right? And they should check it periodically or use software that sends them updates periodically. That's important to monitor. But your kid really doesn't need to be on Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter, and it's just not necessary. And so, one of the policies that many states are adopting is parental notification for your kid to sign up for a social media account. And I think that's a sensible policy. And if I'm the parent, I'm not going to consent to my child having a social media account.
I need less issues and less problems as a parent, not more. Why would I?
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't do any good. I mean, you think about the way in which young people present themselves on social media. Basically, they're always comparing, and they're always comparing up. And the reason they're always comparing up is because everything that's presented on their Instagram, let's say, or their Snapchat, is an airbrushed version of their peers' lives, right? They're not hearing about the pretty girl at school who got a D on her algebra exam because she's not going to mention that, right? She's only going to post the amazing vacation she took to Hawaii with her family and her sort of beautiful suntanned whatever. And so you're not actually, so there's this subtle comparison. Am I measuring up going on all the time when you're scrolling through those feeds? But it's not actually a fair comparison.
Now, because
you're not comparing yourself to reality.
Does that phenomenon already happen in a normal social environment where kids are at school?
Oh, 100%.
So you're always kind of, comparing and contrasting yourself, and maybe there's a healthy element to that. Maybe there's an unhealthy element to it, but it's accelerated
also
on social media.
Face-to-face interactions are less curated, right? So
hard to hide your blemishes.
So the girl who takes a selfie can airbrush it, can take, 26 selfies and pick the one that she wants to post. Social media has this effect of sort of curating my self-presentation in a way that a face-to-face encounter doesn't. Like, I might blurt out something stupid. And so and then I have to kind of learn how to navigate that and that awkward moment, and people see my flaws, but that's okay. And maybe they judge me negatively for that, but maybe they also feel less stupid the next time they see something stupid because, you can kind of see in that social context. So yeah, we do that all the time. We try to present the best aspect of ourselves to other people, whether in person or online or social media, but it's not common to present your mistakes on social media, where it's much more common to have your flaws manifest when you're actually dealing with real people in real time.
I don't think that's a bad thing either, at least from my experience. Sort of like kids are like jagged rocks, right? At least I was as a kid. And so bouncing up against other jagged rocks, we all kind of smooth each other out, right? So there's a little bit of give and take. Someone makes a mistake or says something that they didn't mean, and maybe everybody kind of thinks they're weird. Maybe everybody laughs it off, but you kind of realize, okay, I can't say that in polite company, right? Or that's not okay. That didn't go over well. I'll scratch that joke from my list. But then someone else does the same thing. And so we all kind of like, okay, you know what? I learned that, people have bad days and make mistakes. And so, but there's none of that in social media. You send the wrong text on your text string, someone screenshots it, and then it's there forever with no context, no facial expressions. There's really no understanding of that. And you've lost that. You've sent that text message, you sent that picture, it's gone. And there's no way to explain yourself away, despite as much. And maybe your friends are not close enough that you're going to see them anytime soon. And so you're not going to be able to engage with them. So it really is, it's difficult to timestamp yourself, to, way back machine yourself, and put that out there, as opposed to just having those normal interactions, and you're sort of all kind of learning together and bouncing off each other. And then eventually, hey, that's just Josh. That's just the way he is. And, you kind of put up with it, and it's much more acceptable to be flawed.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the stakes and consequences are much higher when, if I say or do something stupid or inadvisable in a group of 6 people, then 6 people notice, right? And maybe they'll tell a couple of other people, maybe, but if somebody screenshots something, everyone in the school can see it 5 minutes later.
Everyone in the world.
Everyone in all the neighboring schools that I might transfer to can also see it 5 minutes later. So the potential consequences of sticking my foot in my mouth are just exaggerated online. So I think no social media, carefully monitored screen time with text message, FaceTime, and other forms of communication through a smartphone. And fortunately, there's newer smartphones, so-called dumb phones. I think maybe the terminology should be reversed, that have been developed that are stripped down ways of helping adults too contend with the addictive nature of these devices. So, I'm not endorsing any one product or another, but I have family members that use the so-called Wise phone. I met the CEO of Wise Phone recently at a conference. Very thoughtful guy. The so-called Light phone is another stripped down, very simplified mobile phone. Where you can have the apps that you need. Your kid, with a Wise phone, he can have text, he can have call, you can turn on and off photos, you can have maps. So you're worried about your 16-year-old driving, without that help. So stuff like that, but without a lot of the nonsense that can be, at best a distraction and a waste of time, and at worst, potentially something, toxic or harmful. So being thoughtful about what kind of device, or if you have, your iPhone or your Android, is it got some strong parental controls on it? But just be paying attention and being aware of how your kids are engaging anytime they're engaging with screens, and maybe taking a break from time to time. I mean, I know another father who I admire very much, father of a large family, and they do tech-free Sundays in their house. So everyone puts their phone, tablet, whatever in a basket, and there's they do other things, sit and talk, let's play a game, let's go somewhere, let's take a bike ride, let's go on a hike. Let's just get away from the screens.
Yes.
Just
stuff
kind
that
of
human beings
detox.
were doing for thousands of years before 2007, when you had a phone with
right.
a graphic
so
user interface.
A little Sabbath. I mean, fast from. If you're a dad, fast from Twitter for Lent. Like rein yourself in too. Like be self-aware about how you're engaging with these.
And what example you're setting, right? Do you come home from work and are you still on the cell phone? And
exactly.
Are you constantly on it? Are you on it at the dinner table? I mean, the kids are obviously going to emulate, their parents. And I'm not naive, and I don't want dads out there to not know what's going on in the world, because I don't think that's a benefit. I know some people just like to check out. They don't want to be involved in politics or culture. They just don't want to hear bad things. And so they sort of check out and they don't pay attention, which, I mean, if that works for you and your family, maybe, but I think being sort of aware of what's going around you is beneficial to you, because I think you can be a better citizen that way, but also it's beneficial to your kids because you want to know what's going on out there and you're sending your kids into the world. So being connected and going to news sites and sports or whatever to relax is fine. I mean, our parents probably, and your parents probably had newspapers and would sit somewhere at the breakfast table or in their chair in the living room and read the newspaper because that's how they found about what's going on in the world. And I don't think that was detrimental for me seeing my dad read the newspaper. In fact, it was a good thing to see my dad sit down and sort of studiously take time to figure out what's going on and become informed. So there's definitely a time and a place for it, but maybe setting up those times and places so it's just not always so ubiquitous to have your phone with you everywhere, constantly be on it. And we didn't talk about this, and we're kind of running a little long, but the addictive nature of it, right? So it's sort of like it's like self-perpetuating, right? Self-perpetuating anxiety, depression, by having this device that is made to ding and light up and do all kinds of great things to get you to come back. And I think sort of that's sort of cyclical in regard to that. So, and it's so as a dad, as an adult, I know I catch myself like, okay, put it away and make sure that the kids aren't seeing you on that all the time, so that they realize, hey, this is a good tool. Any good tool has to be moderation, right? Just like anything. So,
I would advise dads to sit down with their adolescent kids and watch the Netflix documentary called The Social Dilemma, which goes through the way in which these apps and algorithms are designed just to keep you scrolling, and the way in which they're monetized, and kind of how the whole system functions. And these are, the people in that documentary are like former executives at Facebook who were designing these things, and kind of at a certain point had a crisis of conscience and said, wait, what am I doing here? And, I need to kind of warn people about the downsides of some of these things. And so I say this as someone who's very active on X, formerly known as Twitter. I like engaging with social media, both in my own work and as a way of staying informed on things. So, I'm not suggesting you throw the baby out with the bathwater, but in general, the adolescent brain is also not equipped to engage with this technology in the same way that an adult brain is. And if adults can become addicted to it, which we certainly do, it's even worse when we're talking about children and adolescents. So kind of delaying engagement with some types of online activity, I think, is conducive to child and adolescent development. And some apps are worse than others. I mean, I think the visual, photo-based social media apps are more or less worthless for adolescent girls. They're harmful at worst and worthless at best. But, watching an interesting podcast on YouTube is probably a good way for an adolescent to engage in social media. Maybe a way for a dad to kind of listen in and then have a conversation about that interview that they just heard. So there are obviously ways in which you can engage these technologies and the content out there constructively with your kids. I think it's good for dads to let their kids choose the music that they play in the car. That way, what are your kids listening to?
Exactly.
Right. And you might find that you like some of it. You might find that you start listening to some of the lyrics and you're like, I need to talk to my kid about this. Yeah. This is not good.
I mean, and I think it's twofold, right? It makes you aware of what the culture is, presenting, what's popular, what's going on. But at the same time, it gives you a means of discussion for your kid, right? So sort of a Socratic way, okay, what do they mean by that? What do you think, sort of question your kids to get them, instead of just reflexively listening to a melody or a beat, sort of think about the music they're listening to that may be having some sort of subconscious effect on them, right? Some sort of influence they may not think of. And then maybe they begin to appreciate the music more. They think more, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And then, or they start to realize, maybe it's a good beat or it's a good melody, but maybe there is something to this music that's it's not giving me the best messages and it's not sort of uplifting, and maybe I should transition to something else, because there's plenty of good music out there that, that's edgy, but at the same time, has some decent thought-provoking lines. The last question I would say for you is, what do you say to parents who are reticent to engage with their kids, or they don't want to be like a helicopter parent, or they don't want, or maybe they don't want the pushback from their teen about, you're too strict and everybody else's dad is doing this. I mean, like you mentioned listening to music in the car. Back in the day, your parents would give you rides around town. And for whatever reason, when we were kids, like the front seat versus the back seat or the third row seemed like it was like a football field away. So I could say things and talk about things with my friends, even though my parent was 4 feet away from me. It just didn't cross my mind. Now I'm a parent. I'm thinking like, I can hear everything you guys are saying. I don't know if you realize that, but they sort of check out and they think they're in their own world talking to each other, which gives us parents a glimpse into how they actually really talk and what they talk about and sort of, all the gossip and that kind of thing. And so with social media, unless I'm reading through their text messages or I'm looking at stuff, I don't have the opportunity to be in the car with them now. This has sort of replaced that. I didn't have a problem eavesdropping their conversations in the backseat when I'm taking them to the mall or to the movies. But now all of a sudden, even though I'm their parent and I put the roof over their head and I educate them and I put the clothes on their back and I feed them and, I care and I love them, I feel reticence to sort of dive into their privacy as an 11-year-old. How do you, what advice do you give to parents to sort of maybe, it's my perspective, overcome that hurdle so that you can, still be involved and care for them and sort of protect them?
So what I would tell your kid is that there is a legitimate notion of privacy, but privacy is different for children than for adolescents and for adults. If you want to have a private conversation with your friend, I will, of course, respect that. You need to be able to have that. But nothing that you do on your phone is in fact private. Everything that you do on your phone,
the great fallacy,
is hackable. There are not just corporations vacuuming up the data from your phone and packaging it up and selling it to the highest bidder, but there are people that, without very much trouble at all, could easily see everything that you think currently on your phone is private. So there is no such thing as privacy on your phone. I would impress that upon them. If they are going to have a mobile phone, they need to understand there's no such thing as privacy on this phone. Oh, well, I have this app, and if I send a photo, it's a little bit whatever. It disappears after 2 seconds, and you're, a screenshot.
Or it won't allow you to screenshot, right? Like the algorithm of the app won't allow you to screenshot. Well,
that's what they say, but this is not, these are not difficult to get around. Simply taking a picture of it with another
just get another
camera.
phone, get your brother's phone and take a picture with it. Now you just text it back to yourself and
there's nothing.
Yes.
Yeah. So just disabuse them of the idea that anything is private. So therefore, if I'm going to let you use this device, which by the way belongs to me, it does not belong to you.
I pay the bills.
And I bought it.
Yeah.
So this is mine and I'm going to let you borrow it is the first thing they should understand. Nothing on here is private and I have access to everything, basically. Like that has to be the contract that you establish with your kid before you allow them the use of a mobile device or a tablet device. And you should either have software that allows you to monitor the text streams on your own device, or you have their password and you make a point of spot checking it from time to time. It's not because you don't trust your kids, but just because they're kids and they're dumb because they're kids or they're not dumb. Maybe they're a really wise young person, but they're inexperienced, right? And so they don't know what they don't know. Those things are just non-negotiable, and it's not intrusive on their privacy to basically have access to everything on their phone whenever you want and to periodically make use of that access. That's just wise and prudent parenting. Because essentially with a phone, one way to think about it is with a phone, you're inviting potentially anyone into your own home, right? So like if some derelict or some bad character came knocking at your door, right? And you open the door and you saw it. So I want to come into your living room. I want to go sit in your kid's bedroom.
Right. Yeah. Let me go sit on your bed with your 12-year-old daughter.
Any sensible father would slam the door in this guy's face, right? But you give your daughter an iPhone. That guy and every other guy in the world like that is now in your daughter's bedroom. Like, if you think about it that way, you're not intruding on her privacy by trying to protect her from people like that. Right?
You're protecting her privacy.
Or just from stupid peers, like maybe some screwball kid. He's not a bad kid. He's just a dumb kid. You wouldn't let him into her room either unmonitored. So, I'm just talking to my friends on WhatsApp. Well, I'm still going to keep an eye on that, right? So frame it in those terms, and you'll see that no, my responsibility as a father is to keep things out of my home that I wouldn't let into my home, right? If they showed up on my doorstep. Well, recognize that the phone basically allows anyone in your home, right? And which is why you need the restrictions, which is why you need the monitoring, just as you would monitor who comes through the front door.
Hey, thanks for listening to The Dad Project. If this talk was valuable to you, please go to our website at thedadprojectpodcast.org and make a voluntary one-time or recurring donation, or use the link in the show description below to help support our operations. Any amount helps. Catch you next time at The Dad Project.